Subsum.
Yeah, it's recording. Not the license. Off.
Right.
Good.
Yep. We're good.
Alrighty then. Good evening, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01 PM. Please note the registration of the emergency. Run. If everyone will please join me for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thanks for coming tonight. At this point, turn the meeting over. Oh, no, we're going to have Mrs. Rumsey give us a roll call.
Mrs. Killer.
Here.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Gendron.
Here.
Here. Mr. Rose.
Here.
Mrs.
Here. Now I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent O'Shea.
Good evening, everyone. So when we were here 2 weeks ago, we shared some elementary 3 through 8 data with you, as well as some demographic data. So tonight, Mr. Mark Kelly is going to be sharing some additional data with you.
Our ELA enrollment. You can see, quite a few years ago, 25, 34, 39, 64, 73. These are Betsy numbers. By the way, Betsy is usually the second week of October, so Wednesday in October. And it was October 11th this year.
First Wednesday.
First Wednesday, sorry. So we try to find some uniform data. Like when we report data, we Betsy because that's a moment in time that everyone takes a snapshot. So 23, 24, and 73, I'll tell you right now today it's 81. If you asked me last Tuesday, it was 84. So, there's a little up and down. You can see we're just growing and growing and growing. I don't really see an end in sight, but I guess we'll see what happens. And again, by building and really just to remind the board, all of our guys from Harmony Hill. The reason we're able to do that is it's a nice use of resources, and I feel like the teachers there just get better and better at teaching ELL. But we're always trying to find, particularly with the numbers that are growing at an amazing rate, we're trying to find ways to give them more support. If we can give them better ELL aids, if we can find people that speak multiple languages as well as we provided more and more iPads that we use so we can hand them to the kids. So we can do some translations, particularly when kids come in. And I will tell you that most of our kids right now come to us needing the highest level of services. Many kids come to us and they speak little to no English. Many kids, there's quite a percentage that'll come to us that need that in minutes. Saying all that, particularly through the amazing job. So to go through our region scores, our ELA regions, this is something we take off the state website. It compares it to the New York State average, which you'll see sort of in the pink color. The yellow is ours, and the school in general. Sometimes there's a little bit of a difference, but that's because it counts our out of district kids. Usually we'll see too much difference because it's there. So as we look at the 64 and remind the board, in the last couple of years, 5 level, 5 is 85 to 100. If there were a percentage, it's a little misleading because each question that they ask might be worth more than the other. You never really know until the end. But we're at 64%. If you look down to I always look at the economically disadvantaged, not disadvantaged, 76 and 55. So we get a little bit of work to do there. Those numbers have been getting a little bit better as we go. Students with disabilities is 23%. And again, we have some work to do there. And I think that's very much different than what we've had in the past. But again, we don't need to work on that. Any questions about that regions? So in algebra, we definitely have some work to do here, 31%. This is actually the lowest that we've been in some time. If we're looking for reasons or some things that we could do better or improve on, I know that we're working diligently on getting more and more AIS classes at the high school. We definitely need more AIS and also at the middle school to get math scores up. I think the light at the end of the tunnel, and I always like to put, if we have resources, put them in those grades. Early intervention is always best, and our iReady score shows that our kids are doing better and better in math than they ever been before, and that's on the rebound. As you'll recall, during the pandemic, we really had to slow down with learning math. Kids really weren't learning math from home as easy as the rest of the kids. And so you'll even see economic disadvantage and advantage 36 and 30. I mean, those are pretty close. This is just a low performance score. So really look at our resources and where we use them in the high school. Additionally, we're going to have to work harder, if I'm being honest, at math teacher retention. Because I think that that's sort of part of the story that might be going on here. You know, again, it's always important even to look at the anecdotal data. That's
Go ahead, you go first, Margaret.
I was just gonna ask, as far as the algebra is concerned, do we know the percentage of the middle school passing rate versus high school? I know that a lot of districts are going more towards pushing into middle school just because it seems like kids are a little bit more receptive as young as they are younger. And so, I mean, that 31% is scary. But if we are successful here, you know.
I would tell you that if you'll give me a little leeway if I'm off on the percentage, Mr. Jackson, but I'll ballpark it. This particular cohort, when they were in 8th grade, were about 16% proficient. So I don't disagree with you. I mean, I do think in looking at the iReady scores in New York State test scores, which apples and oranges between an 8th grade New York State test and the algebra test. You wouldn't think so, but they are absolutely apples and oranges. And what I can tell you about that is I would have kids 2 sections and all but one kid would pass, and I'd have some of the highest grades in the district when they took it in 8th grade. And then on algebra, those same kids would take the New York State test and not do as well. So,
But Mr. Martinelli, the question was, so do we know what percentage of our 8th graders passed this regions?
I don't have that right now.
96%.
96.
You know, it's
Get-
high.
Right,
It's
right.
it's
And
very high.
that's the point that I was kind of getting to is like a lot of districts are looking at the programs at the middle school being more accelerated in accepting, especially one of the gateway exams, to be able to have credit before they get to high school.
If you remember, Skilla, we used to have 2 sections
Right.
of accelerated math, and we would send 2 sections up to the high school already having that credit. And I'd like us to get back there.
And just so you know, just to, Laura couldn't be here this evening, but when she presents the secondary budget, there's also some components that she'll be talking about to address some of this data there.
Are we still doing the stretch class where it's over the course of 2-year period or 1.5?
I don't believe they did that this year. But again, I think that that's something that we should discuss and revisit, whether it's 2 years, 1.5 years. And then the time, if we want to do a double block or keep it at a single block, we've got some things that we should throw on the table and work our way through.
So what had happened is they weren't doing it over 2 years, except for the algebra prep, but they were doing a 1.5. What they were finding with the 1.5 is the days that there were the double math periods with kids that were really struggling with math, that was very difficult. So that's part of the discussion too. How do you meet the needs, but make sure, it's engaging in 2 periods of math. That takes a lot of math.
Can I ask, are there any math teacher vacancies that we currently have right now?
Have 2 math teacher vacancies. We have a number of teachers who are math certified, but filling in those areas, meaning they're teaching 6 sections. We have some special ed teachers who are certified in math teaching. And if you might recall last year, we had 1 teacher leave mid-year. So this data mid-year to take a position elsewhere. We had another first-year teacher who left at the end of the year to take a position. So when Mr. Martinelli was talking about, trying to build stability and, look at recruitment, this is the area that has been the hardest hit. Science is the next, but math definitely the hardest.
Do you have any concrete plan outside of Hope as far as filling those vacancies?
So we're going back around to job fairs. Our HR is going to, I believe it's Sienna this Friday, and going to, there's a one being sponsored by Capital Region BOCES in March. We're working with the Times Union. They have a type of recruitment that hits Facebook and some other areas, more social media, not necessarily, the newspaper. We've been really reaching out to try to get student teachers. Don't think we have 1 in math, I believe. We've been trying to do it that way too. And then have some other, we're working and looking at this, they call it a apprenticeship program, but that's for a down the road type of recruitment. But we are trying.
Can I,
Jackson, which is right under the home category, which is in our best category. But as ARP monies are starting to go away, we're kind of hoping that some math teachers are going to hit the job market. Again, it's part of the equation.
Oh, absolutely. And with the state budget, some of the rural teachers that are probably going to have a similar issue.
can I ask about our student teacher program? Because I do notice that every time we have a student teacher that is placed, it's a local college. It's St. Rose, it's now, I mean, many, many moons ago when I was in college, and went to Plattsburgh, they would place you anywhere within the state.
Once in a while we have that. We still do, but it's not free.
Is there a reason why we don't reach out to the SUNY colleges that are?
We do, we reach out to the different colleges, not just right in the area. Actually, in the old days, we were inundated with requests.
Right.
Now we make sure that we try to reach out when there aren't any requests. A lot of times, I mean, if you'd look this year compared to last, we definitely have increased our student teachers, but that's an area we continue to look at. I know that whenever we get something from one of the colleges, we put it out. We've had teachers responding, much more positively. COVID kind of set that back a little, but we're growing.
Right.
So we'll continue outreach with, out of area as well.
I mean, especially with losing St. Rose, there's some great SUNY colleges that are producing some really great teachers. And
By the way, SUNY Albany was able to get
I did read that, yeah.
for the programming that was lost.
So food for thought too, I know that, I was gonna mention that with the St. Rose moving out, building those relationships with SUNY, but, our BOCES is also looking, like where I work, up in North Country, they're looking at, it's almost like a CTE pathway program where it's building and growing teachers, where the teachers are walking out with credits and, part of their degree completed. And I don't know if Cap Region has talked about doing anything like that, but, it sounds to me like they're gonna start it sooner than later. When we talk about a homegrown situation, grow your own, type of thing.
So Becky LaForest and I actually met with some representatives of CTE about the Grow Your Own pathway. And I don't know if Cap Region BOCES is starting. We can always do a COSER with another district. I know that's where the apprenticeship is for somebody with a 4-year degree, but not a teaching degree. And I know there's some COSERs for that in other BOCES. But that was a discussion with counselors with Laura that we're working towards and looking at the courses we offer. When Laura presents the budget, her budget presentation, you'll see that there's a combined psychology course with child psychology and I think it's adolescent and development for a year. That would be one of the courses that would count. So they're mindfully planning some courses to try to help with that as well.
Would those be dual credit courses or just?
That one, I believe that one is a dual credit, yeah.
We want to do credits this week. Living environment, 61%, much above the state average, so that's good. And that's some good news. And our economically disadvantaged, is 58%, 69, those are a little closer to like those numbers. Students in general are 7%, 35, and special education. And, you'll see at levels 1 through 4, there's going to be a new test, and so they'll jump to the 5 levels. This is the only region still remaining that they haven't changed too much.
The science regions.
So.
Are there thoughts, considerations about bringing that down to the middle school level?
So again, we do. Again, we used to have 2 sections, so we used to send almost 60 kids to the high school with that region's credit. And again, we're back to 1 section. I think that if we build it, they will come, much like we did before, and we have to try to push that as coming out of the pandemic and getting kids more and more where they need to be. At the middle school, we also had sort of an open enrollment, meaning any kid that demonstrated that they had the chops, as long as we had some room in that, could get into the program, including kids that transferred in. That was an important switch that we had done years ago. Actually helps with the schedule. So I'd like to get back there. Actually, if it were up to me in a few years from now, back to algebra, I would have both of our kids take algebra and drop it down to 7th grade eventually, but we have to work towards that.
Just as we're talking about these two, there were exemptions in different regions exams the past couple of years, which means you didn't necessarily have to get a 65% if you were passing in your courses and had a certain percentage in here. So we think that impacted the scores a bit. And if we looked pre-1920 to now, there's definitely been a dip, and that's part of the planning process. When Mr. Martinelli was talking about English this year, there was an AIS English teacher in the high school staffing through ARP. You're going to be here, Laura, talking about how that's worked this year and asking to continue that. They've also had all juniors take regions in January this year, the English regions, which means they can take in June. So, for each of the areas, there are different action plans that Laura can speak to much more. And then at the end of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about a special ed action plan too.
And we like that data. I mean, that data after January, as we're getting the data, helps us kind of plug some holes. And in the past, sometimes we wait almost an entire year before you got the data back, and it's almost too late. I really like that they did those in January. I credit Laura for doing that. Just in geography 79, I want to point something out. Oh, yes, sir.
Just one clarification question on the living environment and the algebra. Those are the high school only numbers?
No, these are going to
Go back up to algebra. Because we had a whole bunch of level 4s and 5s, but they're at the middle school, not high school.
So these are reported on the state website, they combine them, but I tell you what, I'll double check and make sure my times.
Are you saying that they're,
So at the, as
Because the
Margaret mentioned, 96% were proficient that took.
at the middle school?
Middle school.
So we're
So we had nine.
we're so non-proficient at the high school level.
Seven.
they'll add them together, so I just need to check the cohort size. The next, in this year's, and remember, we went down one section, so it's not the two sections.
So this is on the school report card data from the state,
They do
state ed,
provide-
so we need to see if they pulled it out.
School scores.
Well, I mean, if there were so many, I mean, right now it says there's one student
They're
that was
separate,
at level
they're
4.
separated. So it's.
And 0 at 5.
High school, it's 27 at the middle school.
History, world history, geography, this is a great turnaround, this is a new test. Again, it used to be that our kids, and the other kids in other districts, back alone, would not do so well on this test, and actually, this is the test that be a pain in everybody's side, trying to get kids across the finish line. But we hit it at 79%. Which is great. General students 85, students with disabilities 42. But if we were to go back through and just focus on students with disabilities, this is the test that they just pressed on. And this is a test where it's unrated. That's pretty good. And I think this managed, so it's pretty one. This worked out well for us this year. Then history and government, again, 72%, pretty good in comparison. And gen ed students, 79, students with disabilities, 33. There's a gap there, where I was watching that gap.
If I could mention a student with disabilities, so Laura, Tarla, Erin Hill, Rachel Marcel, Matt Flannery, our special ed teacher, Heather Ball, our English teacher leader, and I might have missed someone else I can ask at the end, have been meeting, I think it's monthly, close to monthly, to discuss ways to improve the graduation rate in the regions, which includes the region's passing rate of our students with disabilities. They've talked about a number of attendance ties greatly into achievement, student engagement, when special programs, surprise Erin, when special programs is presenting their budget, I'm going to ask Erin to touch a little bit on that as well. So there's a lot of work being done in that area. Did I miss a teacher? I want to make sure I mention everybody. I got everybody.
Yeah, Amanda Gaber.
Amanda Gaber. And Amanda Gaber, school counselor, just so you know, to really focus in on that area.
It's that last slide.
Okay. Any other questions about this? And we'll disaggregate, we'll share the middle school data and living and math with you separately.
And those are always combined for accountability and APPR. They do take and use our scores at the middle school. When
I got a question. Like math and science teachers, I know are tough at every school to get, but in our recruiting of teachers, and I think Cohoes is pretty strict about like when you lose teachers to other school districts for pay. And I know you're strict with like the amount of years a teacher has that comes in. But like, what is the, because it's tough to, if you have a great teacher, to lose a great teacher, that's tough to replace. Is there any, what's the policy like to go after a teacher that you want to keep? Does that happen often, or is that a possibility to entice good math and science teachers? I don't know.
So in the contract, as per contract, for each year in a public school, a year can be given towards experience, so 1 for 1. For each 2 years in a private school, a year can be given, so 1 for 2. So that is, that is set, and so we have to, be careful with that. What's happened, though, is in the past, I have not gone over a step 10 in offering a position and have been very consistent with that. That would be something where we would need to have discussions in the future about looking at, you know, the leeway and being able to offer more than step 10, still following the contractual, contractuals.
You just can't add years, you can't sweeten the.
And we have lost some teachers who've had a number of years of experience because, they were only offered at a step 10, but we've also had a number of teachers still join us at the step 10 who have had many more years of experience. So it kind of becomes difficult too, because, we've had a number of teachers join us at that step, but there is some flexibility outside it, but the 1-for-1 and the 2-for-1 are.
Okay.
Okay.
What kind of resources are we utilizing to close the gap between ED and non-ED? It's a big gap across the board.
So, well, first of all, we're paying more and more attention to data. And by the way, if you, on this data website, this is broken down into many other different subgroups that you can look at the disaggregated data. So one thing, and this is across the board, behavior also ties in with student achievement. And so that's where with working with Rachel Marceau on a multi-tiered system of support, we need to get back to a much more robust system of tiered supports academically, to looking at tier 1 and engaging instruction in different strategies, and then increasing those levels. So that has been a discussion. It was actually a discussion this morning with elementary principals meeting, because this is the high school, so this is the result, but this is K-12 or pre-K-12, and we have to be focusing at all of those, all of those areas. But that is a discussion pre-pandemic. We use certain progress monitoring systems. We're talking about making sure outside of iReady that those are back for our students who are struggling. You might have heard us talking in the past about Ames Web or some other things. So we're looking at that. We're also, if you look at the elementary, when Mr. Martinelli was talking, not just 2 weeks ago, but earlier on with iReady, our math scores are starting to improve at the elementary. So it's really building upon that. Yep.
And even with iReady, it's not just, using the program. It's on the prize. We're using more data and having teachers have more data accessible to them very specifically about their own kids in their hands. We've had more AIS, academic intervention services, at the elementary schools that we've ever had before. So as we identify kids that need an extra push, we're trying to get them to teachers as quickly as possible and into those interventions. The adoption of a research-based curriculum and the PD that has gone along with it only helps. And, again, there's more work around that. It takes 3 to 5 years to get really good, at a curriculum. But I think if we're building a recipe, I think in the elementary school, it's a nice model, and we're going to get back to that at the middle school, and certainly up to the high school.
So 9th grades, I think it's just in special education, but is looking into iReady. But also attendance is a big issue, and we can share that data at another time. And so Rachel's been, in the ISTs and attendance committees at each building have been working. And now it's time to pull it all together and see what can we do consistently across all 5, because I would say, and I think that's what came out with special education with your working group as well, that the attendance was a big factor in terms of the academic achievement.
Can't learn if you're not here. So this is almost, I'm hoping that this turns out to be a baseline, right? As we out of the pandemic and have the funding, hopefully, which will continue. And move up from here.
And math scores were the hardest hit too, in terms of. So anything else about this? So since I was talking about special education, I just want to continue a little bit. This came up at our budget committee meeting, but I'd like to share in advance of the special programs budget presentation as we're heading into CSE meetings. So next year, we have 17 preschoolers transitioning to kindergarten in need of functional skills classrooms. They are currently in programs with needs. We have several second grade students in our K2 functional skills who need 3-5 functional skills. So we are over in both areas. However, next year in our 3 to 5 behavior class at Harmony Hill, we would have had only 2 students. However, one of the students is slated for a different program within district, and another student is scheduled to be integrated with support. So Karen Renesi presented a plan. She presented it at budget committee where the 3 through 5 classroom at Harmony Hill becomes a grade 1 through 3 functional skills classroom. She tracked the data out over the next years to show that it's sustainable each year. Looking at our numbers of 3-year-olds right now in special education, the bubble for going into 5, we had it last year too, decreases to where she sees it getting back to where we were in the past. So that is, it's budget neutral in the classroom in terms of the teacher and TA and aides. It does involve some more resources for students in terms of speech OT PT, which we'll be talking about at the budget committee meeting. But at the same time, special program directors from Waterville, Green Island, Manans, and our own Erin Hill have been meeting to plan shared services. So for example, one of the buildings might have only a few students for a 3 through 5 behavior room. They'll still run a 3 through 5 behavior room, and then students from each of the other districts can attend. We don't have space to offer, but we do have in certain areas that would allow us, when students move into the district or students are in need of placement that we don't have, to work with them. The model, I mean, we still would work with BOCES, we would still work with private placements, but those are harder and harder to find. And the model would also work, for example, if we need a 0.6 special education teacher, but another district needs a 0.4. We did that a long time ago with Green Island, to where we can then recruit for a 1.0 teacher, which is much easier to find. So more to come with that during Erin's budget presentation as well. But because we're going into CSE meetings, I did want to let you know about that because of it does impact. So instead of having to find a different program for 10 students or find space to create a new classroom, we're able to modify.
Great creative solution. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point in time, Stacy Mackey.
It's our favorite time of year, time to talk about the tax levy calculation. So this calculation is a multi-step calculation. There's lots of different factors that are involved in the calculation. Some of them are trending at the current time, so we use our best estimates to talk about it. I try to be as conservative as possible. And then when we meet later in the month, we'll talk about different scenarios. Typically, we look at least 3 scenarios, and then we talk about how we want to move forward process. This is due to the Office of the State Comptroller on March 1st each year. So the estimated increase is 2.2%, and that is before exclusions. There are two different types of exclusions that we will be eligible for this year. What we know and what will remain the same are the tax-based growth factor, which is 1.0029. So that's basically the year-to-year growth in our assessment roll. So that's calculated by the Department of Taxation, so that won't change. The allowable levy growth factor also is known at this time, so it's 2%. So it's the lesser of CPI inflation, or 2%. So 2% is the cap, and that's kind of where folks think it's a 2% cap. That's why they think that. We do have an exclusion this year for ERS, so that equates to just over $4,000. TRS, there is no exclusion. And the pending information is related to the capital exclusion and the pilot receivable. So pilots receivable, we'd like to confirm with the city their best estimates so that we have the most up-to-date information that we possibly can. So I did reach out to the controller, and he's going to work the numbers by the end of the month. So I'll have a more up-to-date figure for that. So for now, I have an estimate, my estimate in there, but I'll true that up before we meet next time. The capital exclusion, I actually just had a call with Rick Timms, who's our, not him directly, but his folks. He's our financial advisor, because borrowing is part of that component. And we are in the middle of a capital project, and we just had our first borrowing. We'll have a second before the end of the year. And so I need an idea of what those numbers are going to be in order to properly calculate that exclusion. So they gave me a projection. We talked about what it would look like going into the end of this year. So basically the update is 3.6 was a band that's short-term, a year or less. We'll have another borrowing in June so that it's on schedule with the rest of our borrowing. That'll be a larger borrowing, so it'll be to pay off basically the band. We do have a local piece for a little over 400,000 out of the local budget for this year, and then the remainder will have the borrowing through a bond. And we'll pay off the balance of that ban, and then it'll be 11.5 roughly in new money. So all the contracts that we're approving tonight, that'll be paid for with that new borrow. So that's the plan. Anything we need above and beyond, we would borrow in 2025. Are there any questions on tax cap? This is best case scenario based off of 2.2% based off of what we know now. The two pieces of information that are likely to change are state aid and property taxes for the reasons that I just talked about. So state aid is based off of the executive proposal by the governor. I don't know that we'll have new information before our budget is finalized based off of Assemblymember McDonald, his presentation to us last time we met. I don't know if the budget's going to be on time this year. It looks like maybe it might not be. So in the perfect world, we'd be able to update that information as that became available. We might not have that flexibility this year. So that's one piece that I point out. And then the second piece is the property taxes. So typically we do a couple of scenarios of what it would look like. We usually do a 0%, 1%, and probably in this case, a 2% scenario so that you could see what the revenue impact would be. So I'd like to have that open discussion. You comfortable with 0, 1, 2? Do you want me to go to the cap as well? Do you want 4 scenarios or 3? Good enough.
I mean, I would say 3 is fine. I mean, if anybody's gonna be agreeable to anything over 2, because it just, people have
Right.
that so ingrained in their head that.
Yeah,
So 0, 1, and 2.
unless you're telling us you need more, I don't see the purpose of numbers this month.
Okay, so I'm happy to do that. There's not a lot of changes otherwise. So building aid, you'll notice, is going down. So that is because the aid is based off of our old projects right now. So as we get the new projects completed and the final cost reports get submitted, that gap will close a bit. But right now, this year, Rick Tim's group did say it might increase a little bit if we're able to do the final cost reports by December of 2024, which based off of what I know right now, that likely is the case. It's just, it's not a material amount of money. So I'm choosing to be conservative, but that number could fluctuate a little bit with our actual results. Again, it's not material for the overall budget. Are there any questions about any of the revenue items? Food service update. So this year we had the community eligibility program renewal. So that's a 3-year renewal, and then there's 1-year grace period. So it's 4 years altogether. It's district wide. We did have SED did conduct a review of our summer program. So they did an audit of the summer program. We just got the paperwork back. Nice program, exclamation point, and no corrective action plans, so that was great news. We did have the bid this year. Aramark is the vendor that we're working with. So part of the bid, we asked them to focus on menu offerings, and so they're doing monthly promotions. They expanded the daily variety, so that's all good news. They're also going to be doing a student survey at the secondary levels this spring to get some feedback from the students on, what they could do better, what they'd like to see. We're exploring a grant for equipment. So that's a work in progress, and the director does plan on going to a vendor showcase. It's offered in Schenectady. Basically, it's the directors are allowed to collaborate. They might see some new products, some new recipes, new displays, things like that, share out best practices, those sort of things. I am still working on the furniture for our Lansing school and our middle school. It's been a struggle. I've met with several vendors. They've done a lot of drawings for me. I'm still working on it. I haven't loved anything that's been presented this far, so I'm holding up the works, but hopefully I'll have an update for you soon, and hopefully I'll have a solution. Working hard on it, but we're not there yet. Revenues are on track to meet the guaranteed return. So for folks who are newer to the district, we have a unique situation with our food service. Most of the staff is contractual staff, but we do have 6 members that are our own. So we ask the vendor to provide a minimum guaranteed return to cover their salaries and benefits. So that's what that is about. I think I've reached any questions or?
The fresh local produce, OGS help.
So that's a new pilot program. So Brian works with a local vendor to offer fresh and local produce, and he tries to think outside of the box on things that maybe sometimes kids wouldn't have at home and offer that here in the school. So he's been doing that this year.
Is that for all schools?
Yes, yeah. You should know too that we used to service Green Island, and
Right,
we're servicing Green Island with the new contract.
okay.
So that's a single vendor that's working with?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, and they work with a number of distributors and or farms or?
I think it's a local farm.
Okay. And what types of things do you have any idea, like what the offerings, what we're using?
No, but I could ask him. I know the name of the event. He gave me a PowerPoint that I didn't share, but I can forward it. with the weekly update, and then we can get a list of what he's getting from us.
I had some nice pictures about the
Yeah, we did,
offerings,
yeah.
about our new offerings, so.
You know, I'm all in on that.
Me too.
Well, then,
I think all of it should be
There's
fresh.
a lot of some really great things and, you know,
Well, I think BOCES offers some great programs too with fresh food. Just-
They offer it. That's all. Okay. Thank you, though. I appreciate you holding out for the right solution to the furniture dilemma too.
yeah,
No use in spending money if it doesn't meet the need, and we have very specific
Yeah.
needs.
right,
Like, things-
yeah. Trying to have a nice collaborative space. There's a lot of clutter, so we're trying to get there, we're just not there yet.
Thank you for that.
Sure. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Sure. Do you want me to talk about community events?
Continue, I think,
I know.
in there first.
We talk about that.
Sure.
All right, so as mentioned, in an update, our May 1st board meeting date doesn't meet the legal requirement for the annual budget hearing, which must be 7 to 14 days prior to election day. Apologies for the inconvenience. We're hoping that you'll be okay in moving our May 1st board meeting to May 8th.
Sure. So we have the 8th.
You have the 1st off,
Mhm.
but you'll have to come on the 8th.
No, I-
22.
So that'll be May 8th, Mary.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I have one more slide.
Oh, and I have more to talk about later, but kindergarten registration, President's Day and winter recess. But we are all very excited that we're going to be able to break that up a little bit with our budget committee meeting on February 21st. So, thank you. Mrs. Carey, Mr. Jackson, and then our Parent as Partner series, Making Friends and Keeping Them, 10 social skills to teach your child.
Also, the girls are in their first round of sectional games on this Friday and the boys on the Tuesday.
Yeah.
I don't know where off the top of my head.
Say,
Did we share it today, Mrs. Rumsey?
yes,
Yes.
yes, we did. Thank you for that.
Out there.
That's a girls round of learn. Oh, the boys, I think, are Ravina, right?
Repeat, yeah.
They both travel, right?
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Any board discussion of agenda items tonight? No? Community discussion of agenda items? Before we get to the consent agenda piece, we do have a continuation from the old business. Had comments last week about the synergy programming. That one of the most moving was from the student. Give us a little update, and we know that we're going to have a much more in-depth presentation in March, but just so we're all aware of the gravity of this serious and how much work is going into it, we ask for a small update at every meeting prior to the deeper dive. So if you don't mind.
So first to start with, to answer some of the questions at the end of the last board meeting. As I had mentioned, I believe that NERIC had the contract with Synergy and we have the contract with NERIC. That's correct. They hold the contract with Synergy. We did ask if NERIC had, there was talk about additional resources, if they had additional staffing to support Synergy, and Synergy is new to our NERIC as well. And so right at this point in time, they don't have additional staffing. I reached out to the assistant superintendent of NERIC to discuss the difficulties with him, and he reached out to Synergy and will be reaching back out to us. So I'm going to go through a few different pieces and then also let you know some other items. So we talked about the missing assignment issue. That's been tested since we last met and it's working. I'm meeting with Dan and the IT team tomorrow. I mean, they've been consistently working, but to get a project report about where things stand so that I'll be able to share it with you in terms of all the other concerns. What is the plan? What is the timeline? In the meantime, Dan and the high school counselors have met on the transcript issue. I mean, I understand the transcript issue is a very pressing issue because of the timing. So there's a temporary workaround being done to make sure students get the transcripts that they need, which involves, it involves adding notes, which is not the way the transcripts should be in the long run. So Dan has been working with the Synergy team on that. So I want to let you know, in the meantime, we connected with School Tools, with NARIC and School Tools. They continued our subscription through the end of the school year. School Tools still holds all of our student data except this year's data. So all the past data is there. This year's data is in Synergy. We are being very mindful of timeframes as we look through the issues and the potential of being resolved. And that, we have timeframes for next school year. We're scheduling with other areas. Also, in reaching out, School Tools has added some new features this year, including linkage with Parent Square for attendance, and the ability to deliver report cards. I know we've delivered them in the past, but this is a set linkage, some other items. So we'll be also asking them for a demo in the near future, being mindful that as we're looking, at what can be done with Synergy and will it be done, that we also need to make sure that we're looking in the other directions.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Can I get a motion, please, that the board accepts the following resolutions of the February 14th, 2024 agenda, 6A through W and 7A through F?
Make a motion.
Yes.
I'll second
Thank you.
it. Mrs. Killer.
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron.
Yes.
Ms. Paredes.
Yes.
Mr. DeRose.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Comments from the board. Comments from the audience, anything that's not board related? Erin Hill?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you all, particularly Renee, because you have spearheaded this whole thing. But our new unified form will be on their first match. And so they've had a couple of practices at Cohoes for matches, and then a culminating activity that actually will be in the school, where they travel to another school and get their again. So it's really great, and we are very excited, and I think it's fabulous. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Such a great program. So excited to get out of this year.
Thank you to all of you for supporting the program. I think it's awesome for our students.
How many students do we have on the bowling team? Do we know?
Have 8
So bigger than the gen ed.
students with disabilities, and I don't know yet how many.
It's pretty impressive turnout. Thank you. Okay, any other questions from the audience? No? Okay. Just please note that we had the first reading of several policies tonight, also the second reading and the adoption of the workplace violence prevention policy. So it's all done that on the books. And dates for future meetings are February 28th and March 13th here in the library at 6 PM. I'm happy to report that there is no need for an executive session. And if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn, we can all go home. All right,
I'll second it.
thank you.
Mrs. Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Mr. Rose, Mrs. Carey.
Yes.
We wanted you all to get home to your ballot.
You're good at present.
Huh?
I said I gotta go get a present.